My name is Phil Goldstein. I am a writer and a poet and a survivor of child sexual abuse. Very glad to be here and listen to everybody's poetry and be part of this community. The poems that I'm going to read are from a book that I have coming out. It's actually going to be published April 5th, but it's available now for pre-order. It's called How to Bury a Boy at Sea, and it is available from Stillhouse Press, which is a great small independent press based near where I live in Northern Virginia. So without further ado, I will get started. We never went to the beach when I was a boy. He and I are traveling to an alien shore alone. He commands me to get into our tiny boat. My feet stay stuck, stakes buried in the sand. The waves roll in, briny and filled with seaweed, water that makes me gag when I get washed underneath. He pushes me aboard, then clambers in himself, eager, a bird learning to fly. Gulls cry in the gray blanket overhead. He has the oars. We are rowing now. How my mother made the soup on Rosh Hashanah. I'm standing next to you, almost attached at the hip, following your movements, Mama. You are preparing all the ingredients for matzo ball soup, using a recipe that stretches back to some long dead shtetl in Poland. I cannot grasp the history. All I can think of is the smell of the broth, carrots, celery, and dough as you bounce around the cramped kitchen, a ball of your own neurotic energy. It's time to say Shana Tova to cousins, aunts, and uncles. I have finished making everything presentable. I'm holding back and waiting while you whisk magic into being. Your pot is a cauldron of history and comfort, golden and shimmering. A pinch of sugar there, a few grinds of pepper there, and now we let it simmer. We let it simmer. We let it simmer. We wait for something to change. A prayer for repentance. How can someone atone for a sin they cannot name? It was Yom Kippur. The four of us donned formal wear. Mom was anxious and had to double check the locks, making us late. Dad yelled, cursing the heavens, our annual ritual, fasting, and then rushing out to Wendy's at 4 o'clock to break. How can someone atone for a sin they cannot name? Among the crowded, ticketed, gussied up masses, we filled in to pray, to atone for our sins. I was 11, obediently taking in the words of Teshuvah. For transgressions against God, the Day of Atonement atones. But for transgressions of one human being against another, the Day of Atonement does not atone until they have made peace with one another. How can someone atone for a sin they cannot name? How can I forgive my brother for a sin he will never confess, not to me or our parents? After the afternoon service, we got our single combos, square burgers, golden and salty fries, ice cold Sprite. I squirted the ketchup into 2 rimmed paper cups. We devoured in near silence. What a bed takes in. The things I've seen would make me tear my eyes out, if I had any. What I felt from so many years ago still stains me deep in every fiber of my being, no matter how many times I'm washed. I saw a boy, thin of frame, drawn into my center by a larger one, stronger, who pushed the little one's head under my folds, and there it stayed for quite some time, bobbing like a cork in the Atlantic. All of these years later, I want to swallow myself whole for letting it just happen right on top of me, for not shouting, for not even breathing a word. How does one recover from witnessing such pain? Will I ever tell you, dear reader, of all that I know? Can you wring it out of me like water or semen? Will I collapse in a heap, damp at your feet? Can you stretch me in the rack, tortured and taught? Even then, what am I? Certainly not what you see and touch every day. Surely, nothing so neat and serene and soft could hold so much inside. Night cruises. My world is only slightly wider than a twin bed framed by endless ocean. So much seems unnatural, but I know one thing. Long nights are coming. The stars above are the only fixed points to hold. I grasp for anything else that's secure, but no, I don't control the oars or even where I sit when I cross my legs. When I wake, sore and lightened, he is still rowing and smiling. Form and void. I'm staring at a computer screen. The past is staring back at me. It is at once just a clickable PDF form and my deepest shame dripping in the dark. I am 30, surrounded by coworkers in an office. I'm 10 years old and I'm alone. The form interrogates me, asks me plainly in black and white, abuse history, 2 words freighted with steel and lead, physical, emotional, neglect, sexual abuse, the options, PENS. I am seized by the tight grip of memory. I'm back in the basement on the cool gray stone floor. I'm holding my brother's erect penis in my hand. I'm 12. The form stares back at me, expressionless. Its professionalism is detached, but comforting. It does not judge. I do not want to lie. I've lied enough, and I fear and worry what will happen if I keep lying. What if I lie and then my therapist, my first, finds out? The fear of discovery purchased my silence. Now it pays for my voice. What if I lie and this never gets solved and I can't have sex? What if this never gets solved and I end up alone again? Age, I fill in 10 to 12. Type, I mark an S. By whom? My older brother. Duration of abuse, 2.5 years. Reported? Yes or no? No. Outcome of report, left blank. Memories of my childhood, if they had been photographed. In this one, my brother and I are under the table, scrawling spirals in twisted shapes we hope will stay hidden over and over. Here, we're waiting to get ice cream, melting in the late summer sun, August almost over. Sometime later, playing in the parking lot, the smell of bubbling asphalt filling our nostrils over and over. We are sprawled out on a blank, scratchy carpet, bathed in the darkness of February. Mom and Dad drop off boxes at the new house. He draws my hand to his penis, which he tells me to tug over and over and over. Suddenly, they are calling out from the kitchen below. We zip up our jeans and jackets, file downstairs. What would have happened if they caught us? What would have followed us into the icy night? Gibraltar. I see you now in the hazy veil of painted twilight, a shadow but not a terror. You were the monster of my childhood whose hand-me-downs once kept me warm. Sometimes the flash and force of memory shoots me back, deeper than I want to go. The way I lie down in a bed is enough to take me to the times when you led me to lie with you. I ache the way a tree must ache when it is chopped and left to stand, gashed open in a summer thunderstorm. I stand now in a field with the sun bleeding away to violet. I stand knowing what I have endured, what I can endure. I am a promontory, gauzy in sunshine, the sea lapping green below. You are a shadow passing over my face, a cloud, a memory. The sound of blood flowing through me, for Jenny. The trees drip leaves from their mouths, goldenrod, oxblood, apricot, ruby. They fall like snow as we crunch our way higher. The wind rushes through the trail, a breath of October that finds its way into the small spaces between our intertwined fingers. We are climbing, trudging, stopping, walking together. There is no one else who knows the rhythm of the way I hike like you do. No one who knows how I stumble like a klutz on rocks sometimes. I march ahead at other intervals, jumping over tree roots buried in a pile of honey-colored foliage. You chide me, we laugh, we plow on. There is no one else I would rather be with at the peak as the breeze licks our cheeks. There is no one else who knows what it means for me to reach a summit, any summit. You do. You know the sound my heart makes as we take in the view of the valley. How to bury a boy at sea. Above us, The sky lost all its natural hue and roared with a force that shook us from bow to stern. The time for splintering drew near. The lightning flashed. For the first time, he looked scared. It was an expression I knew so well, having seen it in the water staring back at me for years through every kind of weather. The waves barked and the wind laughed, for we were children adrift and aimless like a bubble, one whose very being could be snuffed out amid the casual violence swirling around us. Then it happened. The ship began to crack apart. We were separated, truly, for the first time in memory, passenger watching an ancient homeland fade from view. I was the one who shattered the boat. I was sick of the salt water poisoning my veins, poisoning my cells, depleting me day after day. First I whispered, then I spoke. After I shouted and howled a ferocious tune. He had caged me here, and I had agreed to be caged. I thought cages were safe. They're not. They're merely a tool used to keep us from being in our natural state. He staggered, grasping for me or anything to hold on to, but scooped up only rain-swept air and disappointment, precursors to his ultimate watery end. I was floating on the wreckage as he gulped his last. I didn't move. I didn't have to. All I had to do was be. Then he disappeared, a sun forever hiding behind clouds. There I stood, at last alone, with only one more body to shed, this boy who lived a lifetime inside of me, carrying a greater burden than anyone should bear. This boy slipped out of my skin billowy and white and closed his eyes in peace, having shown valor beyond measure. I kissed his forehead, then smoothed his hair and thanked him for living long enough to see this day, for being both a boy and something more, something sublime. He and the boat sank down, and I became enveloped in the water, in grief, in joy, in song. I started to swim back to shore in the light of the morning. Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Ashley? You're waving your hands.
Oh, that was, silent applause, but
Gotcha.
Phil, that was deep.
Thank you.
Your poetry is full of very specific sensations, sight, sound, etc., that you can remember, tiny details of what you went through. I know I have that too. I have a broader forgetfulness towards certain things and time periods, things like that. But I have very specific, tiny little details, memories of the abuse itself. Do you have that juxtaposition as I can't remember this long thing, but I can remember this little thing?
I think that there are, for me, several distinct memories that I have of what happened. And I think all of them, or almost all of them, made their way in some form into certain images in different poems in the book. As you and probably lots of people on this call well know, when you're going through a trauma like that, you tend to dissociate and, as a survival mechanism, and you're not taking in everything, or, you're concentrating on, one thing in wherever you are, something on the ceiling, or, something in the corner of a room. So, I do think that I try in the poems to have, very sharp images, I guess is a way of answering it.
Yeah, I experienced the same thing. I use very, I guess you would call it specific language when I tell my story. And it is an attempt to get people to see or hear or feel what I felt. And what you do is incredibly, incredibly effective in that sense. I go with you there when you speak, and it's horrifying, but at the same time, to hear that you have, and this is what I'm reading into it, and you tell me if I'm wrong or not, but at the last, that child is getting the time from you to be able to heal. Is that what I'm reading into this? Is that real? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think so. In a way, I think that it's about you know, giving voice to that younger self. But something that I also try to do in the book, and you can see this hopefully a little bit in the poem What a Bed Takes In, is that there are several poems throughout the book that are spoken from the vantage point of either inanimate objects or different settings or locations. So there's a house, a synagogue, a theater, and so they in a way provide that voice and that perspective and that hopefully ability to find healing and meaning that couldn't be accessed.
We have a couple of comments here. Before I say that, I want to say what you were just talking about, the sense and the whole experience of your mother making the soup and being in the room with that for me, what that did is it put me in that mind space where I was standing next to you. And that was incredibly, incredibly effective. Belinda Nestor wanted to say, your imagery is as if painted, perfectly illustrated. Anne said, thank you for sharing, Phil. Rebecca Hart said, love the title of your book. How did you come up with it?
I honestly, I don't know exactly how I settled on it. I think that there were a few titles I was playing with earlier on in the process that were probably a little bit more cliche than I would have liked. But I think that the title for me kind of has a little bit of a dual meaning in the sense that on the one hand, it's a story about a boy who is isolated and really kind of, metaphorically buried, deep beneath an ocean. On the other hand, it could be seen as, how do you lay to rest that piece of the past and that younger self? How do you sort of provide the appropriate, respect and kind of mourning, but hopefully, in the process, find some closure and healing.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for that. You've had an intense effect on me for sure. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.